Welcome to the Cult is King podcast. I'm the Duke, and I'm here with my co-host, Ramblin' Bones.
Hello?
Today, we're going to be looking at the movie I Picked, the classic 1957 film, The Giant Claw.
Yeah, what did you think of it?
Pure Kino.
All right. I personally was relieved watching it. It was a movie that had a reputation for being a very bad movie, and I was glad that it was on the so bad it's good. It wasn't even offensive, like an Ed Wood movie where it's just pain to watch.
It's only a movie, technically.
Well, no, this is a movie. The human drama is kind of dumb. The monster's kind of dumb, but it's very fun. It's very watchable, and it's not a slog. It is an hour and 12 minutes of entertainment.
No, and I was meaning like an Ed Wood movie is like only technically a movie.
Yeah, no, an Ed Wood movie is only a movie in the fact that some of them showed on the big screen.
There were actors of sorts.
People were in it.
No, the one thing that struck me about this movie is, one, not only did I have fun through most of the movie, but it was just incredibly watchable.
I was expecting to be very bored with the human drama. I thought I was going to be waiting for the next monster scene. It's like, oh, when's it going to come? And there's only going to be like 2 in this whole movie. But no, they pull out the goofy monster enough times, and the human drama is written so poorly. It's not painful to watch, it's just silly to watch.
And at least it does a good job of being tied into what's happening with the monster and the plot at large.
And you don't hate the characters, but I'll give a quick rundown of what happens in the movie. The movie follows Mitch, who is a radio engineer, and Sally, who I believe is like a
She's a mathematician.
Yeah. Okay. And they're like setting up radar for the Air Force. And Mitch sees, as he puts it, a flying battleship. The battleship is very important because they tell you that several hundred times throughout the movie.
And on a quick aside here, if you're over 21 and listening to this podcast, a cool game you can play is just drink every time they compare it to being the size of a battleship.
So one thing I've noticed watching this movie is the writers will latch on to like a word. In this example, battleship. They keep bringing up, it's as big as a battleship. It's as big as a battleship. You'll hear that throughout the entire movie. But there'll be little dialogue bits where they've locked on to like a piece of imagery or I'm trying to think of fancy writing terms.
I can't tell you the term, but a moment comes to mind where they are on the plane and they are comparing like their dating to baseball, and they just run with that metaphor for like it feels like 20 minutes.
Metaphor was the word, but yes, no, they won't shut up about baseball. Or another time where, a general busts in on Mitch, and Mitch has got this idea, and he's like, if you just give me like 10 cents of your time or something. And they keep up with this money metaphor and won't shut up.
I'd donate a dime to that.
It's like that in multiple different scenes where we've got a topic and we've inserted it into the dialogue and we keep saying it again and again.
Well, what I think they were going for is, if any of you guys have ever watched a Humphrey Bogart movie, or even then if you're like have seen like that like 50s wise guy like back and forth banter like spoofed, I think that's what they thought they were doing. But it all goes on. They'll even start off clever sometimes, and then it goes on for like 5 minutes too long of the back and forth, and it just I'd say it doesn't work, but honestly, I think it's enjoyable for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but Mitch and Sally, okay, there's a giant battleship. And by giant battleship, I mean a marionette of a giant eagle bird thing
Imagine if you asked Dr. Seuss to draw what he thought a pterodactyl looked like, and this is what you would get it. And if you haven't, if you don't believe me, I want you to go on right now, and I want you to Google an image of the giant claw and tell me that this doesn't look like some sort of cartoon-like buzzard.
But Mitch and Sally, now, at first, of course, the military doesn't believe him because it's not showing up on radar. It's later revealed that the giant claw is, of course, a giant space alien, which I was surprised about. I was thinking, like, oh, it'd be like a radiation monster,
Or
prehistoric.
some prehistoric beast, yeah.
But the UFO, or extraterrestrial giant bird, that surprised me. And so Mitch and Sally have to figure out how to kill the bird, well, how to find the bird and how to kill the bird, because it has a antimatter shield, and so none of the weapons will kill it until at the end they figure out that they have to make like a special, I think it was called a meso atom.
Yeah, something like that. So it's like an exotic species of atom, which those things do exist. But yes, they had to shoot one to disrupt the antimatter shield so that it could be killed like normal.
In the middle, there's some stuff that doesn't matter. Like they make friends with a French guy named Pierre because it's in Canada, or part of the movie's in Canada.
Right.
And also
the only person with an accent in the entire state or country of Canada is Pierre.
Yes. And there's also the whole reason the giant bird is there on the planet is to lay eggs, which there's a scene where they're shooting the eggs, and I was like, man, that's kind of depressing.
Yeah, that was brutal. Pour one out for the unborn children of the giant claw.
Well, I'm gonna guess what they did is they took like an actual egg and like shot it with a BB gun or something, because when they shoot the eggs, like egg matter comes spewing out of the holes. I was like, ugh, kind of graphic.
Yeah, if you would like to support our charity, People for Cruelty Against Eggs.
But that's essentially the movie. A lot of different stuff happens, but it's not terribly important. That's what you're gonna get.
One thing I'd like to talk about before we move on is the giant claw itself. I was impressed. What was your take on this creature?
It was another case of my expectations were pretty low, so they were far surpassed by it. Because as goofy as it looks, its nostrils flare, like there is articulation in the puppet. It is not just a solid piece of rubber that, somebody is shaking off screen. It's an actual puppet, and they actually use it. It does things.
No, and I gotta say, the giant claw is brutal. You can see like several shots of him just straight up eating people. I mean, there's no question, they're dead.
Yeah, and tipping over trains, just mass havoc.
Attacking planes, eating people, parachuting, there's lots of fun to be had with it.
And again, they don't skimp out on the giant claw material. It can be depressing when you go in to watch a 50s B movie and there's maybe like 2 scenes with the monster because it looks like crap and we're trying to hide it. In this case, they were not afraid that their monster looked like crap. They just decided to show it.
I do have a story on that, though. So the lead actor, I believe his name was Jeff Morrow.
Yes.
He was going to screen this in his hometown, so he went to the premiere. And apparently nobody had actually seen the monster while they were working on set. They were just all told to pretend like this is the scariest thing you've ever seen. So when he went to watch it, everybody in the crowd was laughing so hard that he tried to sneak out of the theater to make sure that nobody would know it was him, though nobody would recognize him.
I read that. I also read, I don't know if you saw this, but apparently they were originally going to have it be a stop-motion Harryhausen monster.
That would have been very different.
But that would have cost money, and we don't have that. So instead, they paid $50 to like a Mexican marionette maker, and that's where it came from. It came from Mexico.
Well, there you go. And I've always said we need more Mexican kaiju.
Well, is it Mexican or is it actually Canadian? Is this
Dude, well, he gets around. He travels literally when they're drawing a map to find out when he's going to be next. He's like just traveling in this big like Fibonacci spiral just around the world.
I mean, it's world traveled, but they do make emphasis that it laid its eggs in Canada. At least I'm pretty sure it was Canada because Pierre was there.
That's fair.
I mean, they make the whole deal out of Pierre is calling it, was it Lara
Carcagne or Carcagna.
Something that sounds very Hispanic, but he's Canadian, so
It might be French. I don't know.
it could be, it might not be. I remember watching the movie and thinking, oh, they're in Mexico, and not realizing that he was supposed to be French immediately. And I can't tell if that's just a matter of me not hearing like what an actual French accent might sound like, or if it's just a case of they hired a guy, they said do a French accent, and he just did something, and it's ambiguous about what accent they're doing.
See, I have to watch this again. Yeah, no, it's a question of, was he doing a good job and you're just very stupid, or did this just leave something to be desired?
It both are very, very likely.
I have to say, too, another thing about the giant claw I didn't expect is, look, I love 50s monster movies, but a lot of times the monsters are pretty uninspired. Like, here's a dinosaur that's now on the loose, that looks like no dinosaur that ever existed, or here is some sort of radiation beast. But the giant claw isn't just a giant bird. I mean, he's got an antimatter shield. Anything that, like, collides with it, like, explodes. And he's, and the military have no idea how to stop him. And he's spiraling around the world. I'm just saying, he's got more in his arsenal than I was expecting. He doesn't appear on radar because his antimatter shield keeps the radar from being able to get him, despite the fact that he is, and listen closely to this, viewers or listeners, as big as a battleship.
I would actually like to see a model battleship compared to him, because I really have no reference of size, and judging by how big he was in the movie, I'm wondering if maybe he was either bigger or not as big. It's one of the two. I don't think he was as big.
I'm going to be honest, I think his size kind of shifts in comparison to things. There is a part two, and I'm going to tell you, if you're in this to see the giant claw, you are not going to be disappointed. He attacks the UN building. He even does a stint on the Empire State Building. He's at least bigger than King Kong, but there are times where it seems like his size, like he might be more comfortable in an old Godzilla movie, and then there are other times where he seems smaller. But, I mean, that's pretty normal for 50s movies. They're kind of famous for having, like, the sizes of the monsters be wildly inconsistent.
Yeah, and this is a B movie, and as we said, they passed up Harryhausen because of money. So I don't think they were terribly concerned about keeping consistency in monster size.
Can you imagine what it would have looked like if Harryhausen had done the special effects?
Yeah, that would have been...
This movie would probably be as loved as it is kind of ridiculed now. Though, I would argue, honestly, if they hadn't made a $50 marionette that looked like a Dr. Seuss buzzard creature, I don't think the film would be as enjoyable as it is. Maybe at the time it would have been less laughed at, but now it's like you just kind of got to appreciate it. It's almost so silly it's iconic.
When I was watching the movie, I kept thinking of like bits in my head, because the movie feels like a parody of 50s B movies, but it's not, because it's in the period. It is exactly what it is a 50s B movie. But literally, like, the first line of the movie, if I remember correctly, was, "In the beginning, the Earth was big." And then it's like, goes on this thing about, and then radar made it smaller. And it feels like if the dialogue in each scene went on for like an extra minute or 2 minutes, it would be a parody.
Yeah, it's like almost just on the cusp of being a comedy at parts, but then it stops before it tips over the line.
Yeah, and there's a narrator throughout, and also in the beginning, right before, they have the giant claw. He's like, this Air Force cadet, this
This radar man, this Air Force cadet.
this radar man, this mathematician. And in my head, I was like, all right, it needs to keep going. This janitor in the outside, these school, like, just like keep adding people to the Air Force base. They're all important now.
Well, and I will say, one of the things that makes it funny is as much as, like, the dialogue can be playful at times, there's a lot of scenes where this movie takes itself very seriously. Wouldn't you say? Like, the very dramatic narrator, or Jeff Morrow's, like, tortured expressions over not being able to deal with this menace that is the giant claw.
No, everything is, for the most part, played straight.
Right.
So some I can tell somebody there is having a little bit of a laugh, but for the most part, especially like the two main actors, they are taking this very seriously.
Which I'm sure they felt silly for. Though I have heard, I looked up just to see what people at the time thought about this movie, and it looks like it opened up to some pretty negative reviews, but I did hear a lot of people praise Jeff Morrow's performance, which I didn't think was bad, but at the same time, between some of the silly dialogue choices and then just, he tries to add gravity to so many of the scenes, but then you have to remember that you're watching a movie about an enormous flying chicken with an antimatter shield.
And Jeff Morrow and Mara Corday, I didn't realize it, but they are both in other B movies that we really like. Like, Mara was in Black Scorpion and Tarantula, which
both of those are great.
Yeah, both of those are great. And then Jeff was in This Island Earth, which
is okay.
Yeah, it's just okay. And Kronos. He's also in The Robe, which I looked and I saw that, I was like, what's he doing in The Robe?
Yeah, I guess, so can I, so what all you been into? Oh, yes, I was in This Island Earth, I was in Kronos, fighting all these monsters, and then I was also in The Robe.
It actually kind of reminds me of Vincent Price being in the Ten Commandments. I mean, Vincent Price is a great actor.
I always forget that, and I like the Ten Commandments, but every time I watch it, I always forget that Vincent Price is in there. It's a little treat every time.
What's he doing in here?
What you doing, Vincent?
And Fred Sears was the director. He didn't really do anything of major note other than, I have seen Earth versus the Flying Saucers, which he did.
Which was much better received than this.
And
didn't that have, sorry to interrupt, didn't that have Harryhausen effects, Earth versus the Flying Saucers, or am I thinking of something else?
I could not tell you. It's been so many years since I've seen that movie.
I'm trying to make sure I didn't confuse it with something else, but I want to say that one was actually pretty good. Anyway, continue.
It was either pretty good or pretty awful. It's definitely not something in between.
I mean, I picked the giant claw, so I'm not sure I can always tell the difference.
And this was another movie I recognized, Teenage Crime Wave. I am about 200% sure there's a Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode on Teenage Crime Wave.
Well, those were the scariest things in the 50s were nuclear radiation and teenagers.
And if you want to see stupid teenagers die horribly, there is a scene for you in this movie that is, I don't think this scene really contributed anything.
It shows you how dire the circumstances of the giant claw are.
I guess, but their main characters are literally just driving down the road, and there's an order, the giant claw is attracted to sight and sound, I guess.
Just movement in general.
Something. And, they're driving down the road, and of course, 4 teenagers who are hot rodding, down the road. They're giant claw, lame, stupid, not gonna pay attention to that. And they then proceed to 2 of them get eaten, and the others throw themselves out of the car, and they don't die.
They get better. Probably. I don't know. I don't think we see them again.
Well,
to show you how much of an impression they made, I'm not sure.
They check their pulse and oh, they're alive, but badly injured. So they don't. You, the viewer, gets to decide what their fate is.
That's really, and I think we all see ourselves in them. It's just that's what makes the giant claw so scary. Is this could be anybody. These people being eaten. That could be your uncle.
But yeah, it was definitely a scene where I can just picture the writer saying, all right, our movie is only 60 minutes long. How do we push it just a little bit further?
Well, I can't remember exactly, but this movie is already very short. It's not quite an hour and a half even, I don't think.
Hour and 12 minutes.
So, if you're on the fence about whether you want to try this or not, it's not asking much of your time, and I guarantee it'll at least get a chuckle out of you.
Oh, snap. Before I forget, another fact I saw. So I said Mara Corday was in Tarantula and Black Scorpion. She was also in a ton of Clint Eastwood movies in like the late 80s and 90s. Like she was in like one of the Dirty Harry movies and some of the others. Because he played a fighter pilot in Tarantula.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And so they met there, became friends. She retired from acting and then decided to come back. And Clint just kept putting her in his movies and like bit roles. I mean, I would say like cameos, but due to the fact that the only people who are excited are people who have watched Tarantula and Black Scorpion and The Giant Claw, of course.
Her magnum opus.
Her magnum opus. But yeah, I wanted to get that in there because I saw that and I was like, wow, that's funny.
Hey, I'm good for her. And honestly, I didn't think any of the acting in this movie was bad. I just think whoever was writing the dialogue just thought they were a little more clever than they were.
So I looked up the writers of this movie. The movie had 2 writers. And looking at their resume, this is really the highlight. I think most of what they did was television, and that's about it. Maybe I did see a lot of westerns, like serial westerns. And I mean, they were constantly working, but nothing as high profile as the Giant Claw.
Well, I'm sure they might feel differently, but personally, if my biggest claim to fame was the Giant Claw, I think I would be okay with that.
I would be fine having the Giant Claw be my magnum opus.
So here's my question for you, and this is very important, because I was analyzing these things deeply as I was watching the film. Do you think the Giant Claw has a chance against Godzilla?
I mean, unless... Here's how it would go down, okay? The Giant Claw would have Godzilla beat. But you see, the human drama in the Godzilla versus Giant Claw story, the Giant Claw is, of course, evil, and is going to mean doom for the planet. And we're going to say this is like 70s, 60s Godzilla, so he's a friend to children.
Okay.
And so the humans they find the meso atom or whatever, and they shoot the Giant Claw, giving Godzilla an opening to kill the Giant Claw. So without human interference, Giant Claw is, of course, totally beating Godzilla.
Well, and for all those people who are about to flame the comments here, look, he has an antimatter shield. How are you going to get around that?
Yeah, last time I checked, Godzilla did not have a PhD in atomics or whatever makes the atoms go.
Exotic atom species.
Yes.
We're seeing the extent of Rambling Bones' science knowledge on display here.
Yeah, I took that class twice.
But I'm just saying, yeah, with the time, of course, I'm going to give this. Once that shield is down, just about anything will kill the Giant Claw.
They as soon as they shot it with that atom, is game over. Is pretty weak.
I will say though, this is not a King Kong situation. You do not feel bad for the Giant Claw. He was an absolute jerk and was pretty much killing people the whole time.
Well,
to his credit.
Well, I guess they killed the unborn after the Giant Claw started eating people. So
yeah, I mean, which I guess makes the Giant Claw a female. Or maybe, I don't know, it's an alien. Maybe it's got some funky, stuff going on.
I dare not wager a guess.
There's a whole, planet of Giant Claws somewhere?
I guess. Or maybe it's like a cosmic being. Like
a old school King Ghidorah.
Yes, like old school King Ghidorah. Again, I don't know how it reproduces properly, but
Hopefully not often, because
Hopefully not often. There's only room for one giant claw at a time. Just like one King Ghidorah at a time.
Right, that had just been in the end of civilization. Which would have been a bold choice for a movie of this era to go, the giant claw wins.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a bummer, though. And this movie is not about being a bummer. It's all about feeling good.
You think
you can quote me on that?
They're going to put that on like the sticker the next time they re-release this movie.
Giant Claw. It's about feeling good.
Well, I have no idea where to take this after that.
Well, you'd also say, and it's big as a battleship.
And, well, obviously. And it probably is as big as a battleship. I didn't have a ruler with me.
I think at that, we have said it all that we can say about this movie. I think it's pretty obvious, but would you recommend?
I would definitely recommend the Giant Claw to anybody. I mean, honestly, I will probably rewatch this one at some point in the future.
And again, hour and 12 minutes. That is such an easy watch, especially when it feels like, I mean, hour and 30 minutes is baseline, but a lot of movies are like 2 hours now.
Yes, with it not being that strange to get like into 2.5 to 3 hour territory. Stuff they used to just keep on the shelf for biblical epics and stuff. Now every movie just runs forever.
But no, this is not a big time commitment, and it's fun, and it's about feeling good.
And it's about feeling good all the time. So that concludes my pick. So the ball's back in your court for the next episode. What do you think we're going to watch?
So I'm planning on our next episode, we're going to talk about House of Frankenstein 1997, a movie that has lived in my memories as like a figment for years until I recently rediscovered that it exists. So that is what we're going to watch and talk about next time.
Well, you're going to want to tune in for that because it's as much a personal journey as it is I was going to say good movie. I haven't seen it yet. So, to be continued.
To be continued. And hopefully it's also about feeling good. But what would make us feel good is if you smash that like button and, you've probably heard enough of these. So, hit the subscribe or whatever. It's up to you. I'm not your mom.
It'll make us feel good.
It make us feel real good.
And that's what cult movies are about. Feeling good.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Goodbye.